It's another day where we are alive, and so is public health. I'm Jonathan Lile-Sexton. Welcome to Better Together. Look, we've covered a lot of ground this season. Infrastructure, recovery housing, veteran mental health, heavy stuff, important stuff. So for our season finale, we're shifting gears a bit and looking at something new in our region. New Hampshire's first social district, right here in the Lakes region. As a live free or die guinea pig, we feel like a lot is riding on our shoulders so that other towns in New Hampshire have a responsible model to base their social districts off of. Because when people have the option to gather outdoors in a shared, thoughtfully designed public space, especially on a nice New Hampshire afternoon, they tend to take it. And that gives us an opportunity to look at this from a public health perspective. We're talking about how communities designed spaces that support connection, local economies, quality of life, while also thinking about safety, accessibility, and responsible use. Like many other public health issues, this is not a one-dimensional one. It's about balance, context, and how policies play out in real life. Revolutionary that social connection is a public health breakthrough. Just remember Roseto, Pennsylvania, and they might have something to say. Truly, the public health breakthrough of our generation is connection. It's time for a pulse check. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's the summer of 2025. The New Hampshire legislature passes House Bill 467, HB 467, a bill that defines social districts as, and I quote directly from the legislation, a defined outdoor area in which a person may consume alcoholic beverages sold by a licensee. Governor Kelly Ayotte signed it on July 4th. Now, here's the thing. When HB 467 took effect, New Hampshire became the 9th state in the country to allow consumers to enjoy alcohol in public places. That's 9 states. The bill was modeled after legislation in North Carolina that was adopted in 2021, and its primary sponsor, Representative Bill Boyd, worked closely with the New Hampshire Liquor Commission to design it as a local option bill, meaning no community gets a social district unless its own voters say yes. So, let's fast forward to November 2025. The question goes on ballots across the state. Portsmouth, Keene, and Nashua, they all vote no. But Laconia votes yes. 56% in favor, making it the first city in New Hampshire to implement. And here's where it gets interesting from a public health standpoint. Because social districts aren't just, let's go have fun downtown policy. They sit at the intersection of economic development, community vitality, and yes, how communities relate to alcohol. Which means it's worth talking about seriously. In North Carolina, which has been at this since 2021, city leaders report that social districts have provided what they're calling a critical shot in the arm to struggling downtown businesses. And one organizer in Hickory, it's a small mill town that revitalized its 50-block downtown with a social district, told the story this way. I don't think we would have the level of interest in people wanting to open up taverns, tap rooms, or bars without that social district. There is not a single vacant storefront in a mill town. That's not nothing. Additionally, Oxford research found that people who have regular gathering spots in their community tend to feel more socially engaged and trusting of their neighbors, and that those without one had significantly smaller social networks. But on the other side of the ledger, McAllen, Texas just shut down their local social district after 20 years because public safety concerns started to outweigh any economic benefits. Which brings us back to Laconia, a city that we all know has never exactly been hurting for a sense of community during Bike Week, but the rest of the summer, what does it look like? What does downtown Laconia look like on a Thursday afternoon in the middle of July? That's what a social district is trying to solve. And the person who we have on today is the person who is legally, logistically, and operationally responsible for it. Today's guest is Kirk, the city manager for the city of Laconia in New Hampshire. Now, city like Laconia, the mayor is the elected face of the city government, the vision setter, the ribbon cutter, the person who shows up for the photo. But the city manager is the one who actually makes sure the lights stay on. He's a hired professional role, it's not an elected one. Which means Kirk serves across administrations and keeps the machinery of the city government running, whether the political winds shift or not. And here's the thing about Kirk. He didn't come through City Hall. He came up through the fire station. He started as a firefighter-paramedic, worked his way up through the ranks over 25 years, and was named Laconia's fire chief in 2018, which means he's seen the city in a way that a first responder might see it, through the lens of health, safety, and what happens when things go wrong. He then earned a master's degree in public administration because he decided he didn't have enough paperwork to do, and made the jump to city manager 3 years ago, almost 4 years in October, succeeding Scott Myers, who had held the role for a decade. Again, they serve across administrations. And here's my favorite detail about your whole getting voted in. When it came time to appoint you, the at least one city council member hesitated because they weren't sure that a fireman could do much more besides cook a good spaghetti dinner. And but now that council member comes back and says that was the biggest mistake of their professional career, which speaks a lot about who Kirk is. So the man who used to run into burning buildings is now the person responsible for making sure Laconia's first ever social district doesn't turn into one. Thanks for being here, Kirk.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
We're super excited to have you. We're recording this on June 10th, so the Wednesday before Bike Week, but Bike Week is next week in Laconia, and people will see this on Friday of Bike Week. You want to just kind of talk a little bit about Bike Week next week, how the preparations are going and how everything's looking for it?
Sure. The preparations have been going on for a long time. We always joke that as soon as one ends, we start planning for the next one. But we're starting to see the setups happen. We have the tents already being set up on the private properties and now some along the boardwalk. Our public works department is working on the traffic pattern changes and all that. So it's really coming into its beginning, which will be on Saturday. Excuse me, although there is some on Friday night that they'll kick off with, and you know we're looking at 9-10 days of hopefully really good crowds and just a really fun, exciting week here in Laconia.
I've already seen more motorcycles. I don't know if it's because people are already coming in for it, or if it's just I'm noticing them now that Bike Week's around the corner. How have you seen it change over the past few years since you've been city manager? Well,
I mean, even just in my 30 years almost here in Laconia, we've seen the crowds have definitely mellowed a little bit. And if you talk to people that were, this is what the 103rd year I think it is. So, we've seen crowds mellow, but there's still large crowds, still a lot of people coming in. I think you start to see a lot more people taking advantage of the whole area, the whole state, not just Laconia. People aren't here just to see Laconia. They go on long rides. They go up to the North Country, the mountains, out into Maine. They do some wonderful exploring, and so I think it's been great for the state as opposed to just being a Laconia-centric event. It's really helping the whole state. So I think that's one area that we've definitely seen increase over the last probably decade or so. Yeah,
there's a lot of economic activity that comes through it, and I think that's super important. How do you balance the public safety aspect of those economic? Because it does bring a lot of people to Laconia. I was looking the other day for something else we were doing, and there's only been handful of years without any fatalities, right? How do you guys try to balance public safety from a city perspective? Because it's not always on the city or the organizers of Bike Week, right? Sometimes people make decisions that they shouldn't have made, right? There's drinking and driving, there's not wearing a helmet, and it's really hard to balance it. What approach does the city take to trying to curb that?
Sure. So I'll answer it in a couple different ways. First of all, when you see the police out and maybe they're doing traffic stops or they're just numbers of police officers out patrolling and in the city, especially around the weirs, that is designed at safety. It isn't to curtail fun and all that. It is for safety. We don't want accidents. We don't want people excessively drinking and then getting on their motorcycles or in their vehicles or anything. So they're looking at public safety, not only for the person who might do something like that, but for the other person that may be affected, the other vehicles. So we do that through enforcement is one part of it. We also take the approach of we work closely with New Hampshire Liquor Commission. They are out free all the time before Motorcycle Week, during Motorcycle Week, talking to the business owners, especially the ones that sell alcohol. We know that our business owners want to do everything right.
Yeah.
There's zero question in that whatsoever. They want to be successful.
They don't want to lose their license.
They don't want to lose their license. They don't want to have an accident or a fatality on their minds and their conscience. So they work really, really hard at making sure they're doing everything right. So the Liquor Commission will come in and they will train not only the business owners who maybe have been doing it for decades and decades, so they know what they're doing, but their newer employees, their bartenders, their bouncers, those type of people, to make sure that everybody's on the same page with how to be as safe as they possibly can.
What kind of education do they do for like the community, not just business owners, and for the tourists and the bikers coming in? There's public safety campaigns that I know Concord Hospital and the police department are working on one right now. What other education kind of goes into it?
Well, we just talk. All of our messaging that we send out through our public safety departments, police, fire, the Motorcycle Week Association, certainly the city. It's everything we talk about has some component to being safe. Don't drink and drive. Watch for motorcycles. Talk about motorcycles, trying to make sure they're being safe. We don't have a helmet law in the state, but that is something that I'm sure you see a lot of hospitals and those type of people saying, hey, this is an important factor in trying to help you be safe. So we just try to weave into every message that we make some type of a safety announcement. We have a press conference that we kick off Motorcycle Week with every year, and when our police and fire get up and talk, when our Motorcycle Week Association talks, safety is commented all the time. So I think a big part of what we do is weaving it into that. Yeah,
I think that's super important. How have you seen your lens of Bike Week change from being a first responder?
I loved it. I mean, it's really. I think almost every employee will tell you it's just an enjoyable week. Yeah. They do enjoy it. It's a lot of work for all of our employees. But one of the things, certainly from when I was the fire chief, is when we talk about keeping people safe, we also have to remember that there's still residents and business owners and citizens of Laconia that have nothing to do with Motorcycle Week that we have to keep safe as well. So, that was always on our mind, that we had to remember that we also have to take care of everybody else that we would the other 51 weeks out of the year. So that was always factored into how we planned for staffing, how we planned for where apparatus might be, to make sure that everybody's being taken care of. So that was always on my mind. From the city manager role and from the city administration role, Motorcycle Week touches just about every department we have. There's very few departments that don't have some involvement with Motorcycle Week, whether it be inspections, certainly our police, fire, and DPW, but with licensing and our clerk's office and code. Everybody, there's very few that don't have some involvement in it. So I try to make sure that our departments and our department heads know that. Going back to what I just said about making sure we want to take care of the Motorcycle Week event, but we also have to make sure that we're keeping the rest of the city running for the week too. We can't shut down. We can't stop registering vehicles or something like that just so we can go out and do licensing inspections up in the weirs. We have to make sure we're doing it all, and it does add a lot of extra work for our staff, and we know that. But they do a phenomenal job at making sure that they can balance those.
Yeah. Do you have a memory from you've been probably doing Bike Week for 30 plus years?
Well, not quite, but I'm upper 20s.
Okay. Over your upper 20 years, any memory that sticks out to you? Can be good, bad. I think good would be great. Fun memory.
Well, I will tell you that every year, probably my favorite event is the POW MIA ride that comes out of Lowe's, goes down Weirs Boulevard, out through Lakeside Ave and out into Meredith. I look forward to that every year. I enjoy watching that. I'm not a rider. I'll put that out there. But I just really enjoy that event because there's such a meaning behind it.
Yeah.
And to see all those bikers with their vests on, with their patches from who they served with, or what branch of the military or what war they were in, everything from our younger service members all the way up to ones that are in their 80s that are still riding. I think it's really special to see, and so I always have that one always for a fun but special thing that I really enjoy.
Yeah. This year Laconia added a new, I don't know if it's a kink in the hose or anything like that, a new aspect to Bike Week with the social districting. right? How is that affecting your preparations for Bike Week? We'll get into more of the social districting here in a second, but...
Well, we know that, as people come in for Motorcycle Week and they're going to the Weirs, that coming downtown and having dinner and maybe being part of the social district is a part of it. We're not expecting it to be a complete change in the event of, shifting down here, downtown from the Weirs, but... we understand that may be part of it. So again, it goes back to education with our business owners, especially our restaurant owners that sell alcohol, just to continue that conversation that this is the plan, how we're going to move forward. I know we're going to talk about it, but you may have an increased crowd size over the next week or so. And again, they all want it to be successful and they want to be safe. So I'm not really too worried about how that's going to happen.
I think that's one, super reassuring to hear, right? Whenever you add a new aspect to any event, right? Some people can get very hesitant. Some people can become like, okay, gosh, there's going to be now all of a sudden everybody's going to, especially when it comes to like social districts and drinking, right? People are probably like, oh, people are going to go crazy now because there's now the social district where you can drink in specific zones. But I think hearing that you're like, I don't think it will definitely increase the amount of people that businesses see downtown, like 100%. But also, it probably won't be affecting too much of Bike Week itself.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I love hearing that you're also talking about the education piece across the way, specifically because we're in prevention here at PPH. And so we do a lot of... We love that education when the city comes to it.
And not to interrupt on that, but with education... we talk about liquor. We talk about the sales of alcohol, letting underage people in, and making sure we're preventing all that and all that education. Our fire department also goes out and does education with overcrowding, with making sure that we don't have too many people in bars and restaurants, and that's a big education piece because we go back to public safety. If there was a fire or a fight breaks out or something and it's overcrowded, it causes a whole nother layer of problems. So there's education hitting the business owners from a lot of different areas.
I think that's super important to remember about. I mean, it's a good reminder for me, even just like education and the things that go into Bike Week are far beyond just motorcycle safety and drinking, right?
There's a whole lot of things that go into it. The logistics that go into organizing this week, certainly they have their association that handles that piece of the logistics, but from the city side and from our neighboring communities as well, there's a lot of logistics that go on. I'm always proud of our DPW department that they continue to maintain the city. At the same time, they handle all of the trash pickup on Lakeside Ave and in that area. And it's very hard to find an overflowed garbage can or trash on the ground. But it's a big job that they do, and they do it great. But it's just another piece in the puzzle that makes the event so great.
Yeah. What do you think is the most unsung part of the logistics for Bike Week?
Oh, probably the work that those guys do. Absolutely. They are, like I said, everybody has a lot of extra work that they have to do. But those guys are out there. We get like Polaris, ATVs that they go around and pick it up in, but they're outside in the sun all day long, and take their rotations and pick up the garbage and move it along, and they keep the place so spotless. Yeah. But I don't think people see how hard they're working when they actually do that. So yeah, there's a lot of, and I know I just proud of our DPW department, but they also do. They have a huge piece of the setup before and after. They're the ones that are putting out all the barricades. They're the ones that are restriping the roads to make sure for the motorcycle parking and all those things that go along with it. A lot of setup and breakdown falls to them. So, and people don't see that.
Yeah. When it even comes to like your role, you're talking about the DPW and some of the things they do that, like barricades. I always would like put in maybe like the police department, right? Just in my mind of like, that's who probably does that. But adding the DPW, Department of Public Works to doing that. That's expanding just my thought of all the things they do. What are some of the things in your role that you think people might not understand that you do?
I think I don't think people realize how many of our departments are involved.
Yeah,
I said that earlier, but I really think that that's a piece of it. Like we have licensing within our clerk's office, but they're out in the weirs all week long looking for people that maybe didn't get permits to vend. Maybe they're licensed, they're selling something that they're not licensed to sell. We have trademarks related to it. So there's a lot of work in that you may not notice. We also hire in somebody to do food safety, something that somebody you may not have seen, but we always have a certified food inspector we don't have in the city. So we contract that and have somebody work for us for the week, but they go around and check food safety. We have people, our health officer is looking at tattoo places. There's a lot of things that go on that we really try to hit every layer that we can, safety wise. And again, I think the city's job, in this is to keep people as safe as they can. You may not like certain rules and you may not like having, police doing radar details. But it's there to keep everybody safe, and I think that's so important. I think in the city we have a really good relationship with all of our department heads and all of our departments work very well together. It is a very we don't have those barriers that some places do, where this department doesn't talk to this department, and it's hard to get anything to happen. And that's where I would have to jump in and coordinate between two. I don't have that issue. They handle that, and they work so well together. If we need to we forgot to put barricades in a certain spot, and the police department notices that, they're just going to call up the public works department and say, hey, we needed this done, and can you help us out with it? And it's going to happen. If there was a question about the way something was happening a week ago, and that department just contacted the police chief and said, hey, can you come meet with me and we can work this out? And it was all taken care of in 15 minutes. That's so vital to a success of an organization. Any organization, it doesn't matter if it's a municipality or not, any organization should be able to do that. And we do that so well around here that the logistics just happen. And what makes it nice is if all of a sudden it's Saturday night, it's just kicking off of the week, and something wasn't done, something got missed, something new came up. We can handle it because there's no territorial, there's no infighting. It's just, let's just get this done and make it simple. So always proud of how our departments work.
How much has that culture kind of changed over the past 3 years? Do you feel like during your tenure as the city manager, that's been a culture you've been trying to implement, or do you feel like that's just been there when you got into the role?
I think it's been there for a long time. Our previous city manager worked really hard at making sure, especially department heads, worked well together. But I come from a belief. I believe in that meta leadership, right? Where in an organization, everybody should be working together, but you also should be working outside your organization together. If we had a public health issue that we needed to deal with, we should be able to pick the phone up and call the Partnership of Public Health and say, hey, I got this issue. What are your thoughts? And, you hear a lot of people talking about breaking down silos or barriers. We work really hard in the city not to have those at all. Forget about breaking them down. We're beyond breaking them down, and
don't build them up in the first place.
Don't build them up in the first place. But even if they were, those are gone. And I think it has made this city so successful, and it's been going on for a long time. But I certainly am a strong advocate for keeping it moving forward. And I think everybody knows that. Certainly my department heads know that we should never have those issues, and they don't. And how important that is to be collaborative, because you never know when you need another agency. You never know when you need another department within the city, so it's been a long time, and I think I've just kept the foot on the accelerator with that moving forward, because I saw it work so well in my previous role, that why wouldn't we keep that going? So
I think that was one piece of it that you were probably lucky to be able to be a part of. If you were a part of the city infrastructure for the longest time before taking the helm of it, and I think that's absolutely a piece that's I would find lucky to be a part of it.
It certainly benefited us, and me to kind of know where we, know where we stand and know where we need to go. And I think we've been successful because of that.
Yeah. One last question on Bike Week. Just to put some context behind it now that we've talked about it. Should have started off with this question. How many bikers on average do they expect to come through Laconia?
It depends on who you ask, but the numbers fluctuate into the hundreds of thousands of bikers that will come through over the course of that time frame. Because you remember Motorcycle Week, you asked me how things changed. At one time, it was Motorcycle Weekend. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then it kind of creeped into Thursday, and then it kind of creeped in, let's make it all week. So now it's the Motorcycle Week 9-10 day event. But it was just a 3-day event. So everybody came in and wanted to get all of their fun in
real
3
quick.
days, real quick. Now it's spread out a little bit, and people can say, well, we don't need to do it all in one day because we can do it, over 3 or 4 or 5, 6 days. So, those are where we've seen certainly some changes.
How long has that change been happening? Like, when was it the weekend?
We're over 20 years now, probably 25 years of being really in that week long.
Okay.
Yeah. Time flies. I probably told me it was longer than that, but it's probably in that 25-ish range of when it really expanded out to a longer period of time.
Yeah. One thing that is changing now in the city of Laconia is the social districting. Voters voted back in November to say, yes, we want a social district. So take us kind of through the process of the heart behind it when establishing the social district. I know it was a legislature bill that got passed saying, hey, your voters can decide if you want this in your town. Some towns voted against it. Some towns voted for it. Laconia is going to be the first one in New Hampshire to implement it. Yep. So kind of just walk us through the whole process of implementing the social districting from when I don't know if you were planning it before November, or you can start in November and say, go from there.
Yeah, so we can go all the way back to when we see bills begin to start their tenure through the legislature, we start saying, okay, would this affect us? Would it not?
Yeah.
And we kind of weed out the ones that wouldn't and then start focusing on ones that might. One of the sponsors on this bill is Mayor Mike Boards, who is also one in the state legislature as a representative. So he was a big push for that prior to being mayor.
Yeah.
So I think that one gained some traction around here because we had local interest in this. Steve Boards, who is on our city council as well, our Ward 5 councilor, is also in the state legislature. So there was a lot of, so he was bringing this up as well. So there was a lot of conversation going on. Once we knew it was going to pass and we started knowing that we were going to have to put it on the ballot, which was an interesting way of doing it, right? Yeah. It's an interesting piece of the bill to say, oh, yeah, but to do it, you actually have to get your voters' consent as well, which similar to how they did with Keno, but it's not something they do with every bill.
Yeah.
Certainly, a very, very small percentage happens that way. So as we started to get to November, we really started to put a lot of emphasis on talking about it. So the voters could hear as much as they could. We tried to get it in the paper. We tried to get it. We certainly talked about it at council meetings. We always put together a little document for voting if there's a bunch of ballot items, so people can read about it. So we really tried to do a lot of things to educate. This is what you'd be looking at if it was to pass. I'm not surprised that it passed.
Yeah.
I'm really not. I totally expected it to. But once it did, we knew our goal was going to be to get it involved probably by summertime. We sort of early on hit Memorial Day as that estimated start time. Once it passed, then the council had to do their piece on it to agree to where it was going to be, times, all that. So, but before it gets to them, this one was a little bit congruently. We did it with them. Our department heads are police, fire, public works, myself. We're working on the plan. This is what we think the plan should look like. This is where we think it should be. This is where how we would like to see it laid out. the reason we do it that way is so when the council starts deliberating on it and debating on if they want changes to be made, they have a good basis to sort of build off of. And certainly during council meetings, we would hear suggestions and those would get added in. So once they got we have a management plan that we wrote up for it and the map that we wrote up to where the location actually is, they were able to take that and they made some changes to the map. They made some changes to the management plan, but it was a pretty smooth process. It's very similar to how we do a lot of things that we do, right? Ordinance changes start oftentimes with a councilor saying, hey, I think we should do X, and the department head that affects starts building out what it would look like and how that, and then we bring it back to them for, okay, now let's work through the process. The same way we did here. And so once we got to the point where they were ready to vote and ready to move this forward, it was pretty seamless.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome to hear just how much input you tried to give the community, how often you were trying to bring in as many voices as possible so that way the voters could truly hear the best option for them. They could take all that information and be like, okay, this is what I want, right? I know down in Concord, where I live, we had it on the ballot too, and I'm sure there was some talk around it, but the most of what I heard was just very offhanded, like a person maybe talking about it. There wasn't as much education as there was up here, which I think is a huge...
I think a big part of it, too, comes from the city council, both in the previous city council, because we just had elections, and the new mayor and city council. Economic development and sort of that economic push is a big... goal for this, for the previous council and the current council. They're both certainly aligned with that. So, this is just another layer of an opportunity that we can draw people into downtown, into the city as a whole. Even though they may be downtown, they're still coming into the city as an economic driver. So it just fit that, not to use the same cliche to use, but it fits that puzzle, right? It's another piece in the puzzle that we can add to. And so I think that was a reason why the council was on board with it right away. I don't think I heard any negative comments, other than making sure we're doing it right, which isn't a negative comment, obviously. But I think they were, they had a lot of support in it right from the beginning. So, that probably helped the voters as well to see that.
Yeah. There was on here, Seth Wingate over at Laconia Local Eatery said that he's a little concerned about how exciting that it turns out to be long term. His quote is, "I don't know how exciting that this turns out to be long term." And that's not necessarily like the best endorsement from somebody, but what are kind of your long term strategies with it, and how are you going and continuing that education piece with the owners?
So I completely see where he's talking about with this. If we left it alone and just said this is just how it's always going to be exactly it is right now, it probably is a novelty. It dies out and it doesn't go on. We've heard from plenty of people in the public, which have came up with some great ideas. I've also talked just in the last week to a couple different business owners on what more can we do? Yeah, we know we have Pumpkin Fest. We know we have concerts on Canal and car shows. But what about an art walk? What about, just music, people playing music in different areas of the district at the same time? Two corners and someone playing guitar, you're not going to hear that, they're not going to interfere with each other. How can we make it so people want to walk around? And I think we've got a lot of good ideas. We have a lot of people working on those ideas, both, in the city side, but certainly this is going to be something where we take a lot of ideas from the public, not just the business owners downtown, but the public as well, saying, hey, why don't, can we do this or can we do that? And I think that's how it's going to continue to grow. So if we don't do anything, I think it stays stagnant, or I think it becomes stagnant. But if we are adding things that make it exciting to go downtown, I think it'll be good.
Yeah, I think that's favorite idea that someone has said? It doesn't have to necessarily be one where it was realistic, but what was like, did anybody have like a really out there idea that was just, you were like, oh gosh?
I was excited when I heard I had a business owner say, hey, I'm into music. What about buskers on multiple corners or in front of multiple businesses where, you know, they're not going to interfere with each other, but you can walk along and hear different people play just your guitar or who knows what, a violin or whatever they want to do, right? I thought that had a lot of potential. A couple of years ago, there was they were trying to do an art walk where you go around and see different art around. I think cultural is what's going to, you know, those sort of cultural things are going to draw a lot of people.
Yeah. So you mentioned, I love buskers, one. And I think that's a great way to bring in that culture that Laconia is. Especially and tying this in with some of the other events that are long-standing, right? You mentioned Pumpkin Fest, concerts on Canal, all those types of things. Is there any like long-term concern or changes that these events will bring to social districting where you're like Pumpkin Fest might change where the district is, or are you planning to keep it the exact same through it and just have that education piece like you are for Bike Week?
So, first thing we're going to do is we're looking at probably at the 60 to 90 day mark. You know, we don't have it scheduled exactly because it'll come up faster than we think it is. But we know within that 60 to 90 day mark, we want to do a review of what's happening anyhow. We want to have police come in. We want to have business owners and to say, how's it going? What did we miss? Or what are we doing well? And where do we need, where do we need to accentuate that stuff? In that conversation, there could be time changes. It could be district layout changes. There's a lot of different things that could happen. But we also know that during special events, Pumpkin Fest is the example, we are going to change the map of it. It's going to be larger. We really tried to tie in the size of the map to where it fits, again, as a safety thing.
Yeah.
Certainly some of it's convenience, to make sure that for the business owners and for the people enjoying the district. But there's a safety factor as well. We want to make sure that everybody's being, again, government does try to make sure that you're being safe. So that always factors into our mindset. So we know there's going to be changes. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that
there's always changes in everything.
Absolutely. We've already made a change. We were ending at 8:00 at night. And the concerts on Canal end at 9. Well, it was just something we didn't pick up on. I talked to the guy, the business owner that runs concerts on Canal. We said, let's make those changes to 9:00. Went back to the council to let them know we were going to do that and just have them ratify that we did that. And they said, well, why don't we just make it 9:00 on all of our nights that we're doing it anyhow? Okay, that makes sense. They voted on it, and we know this is living, breathing document, and there's going to be changes because we want this to be successful.
And that's awesome that you just have that mentality that this isn't set in stone, right? I love that in 60 to 90 days, you're going to be coming back, you're going to be evaluating it, right? Quick little bit of a detour. You keep mentioning concerts, you keep mentioning buskers. What's your go-to, what's your music that you love? If you could hear a busker play anything, who are you wanting?
So I am so stuck. I'm a smack dab in the middle Gen Xer. Okay. So I am so stuck in the 80s, 90s. So it's hard to beat that kind of music for me.
Any specific band? Style, genre?
I was a rock guy in the 80s and 90s. I mean, the Motley Crues and those types of bands. I mean, that was what I listened to the most. I do listen to country as well. So I'm if I'm driving down the road and those 80s and early 90s bands are on, so that high school, college age time, I'm listening to that.
If you're driving down and you see a busker just blasting Motley Crue on their acoustic guitar, you're like, time out here.
I'm stopping. We're listening to it, and that's I grew up and listening to that kind of music. That was me.
Is that part of your hope with the social districting? Is that people will stop and be like, "Hey, I want to be involved in this."
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That I think that's what you're going to find. I think you're going to see people saying, you're going to start with, hey, what is this? The next thing he's going to say is, oh, this is actually pretty neat. I got an idea. And then it's going to flow. I think it's going to become very organic, and I think it's going to be, as much as the city would love to say we're the ones that's going to come up with all these great ideas, we know that's not the case.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be the citizens, it's going to be the business owners that are going, hey, I get this idea. Constance Canal is not the city's.
Yeah.
You know? But what a great idea. The car shows, things like that. We certainly have put that in our mind now of going, what can we do, and how do we work together to make things happen? Because we're already seeing the success of this, and it's only been, has it been a month? I mean, it's only
couple
been
weeks,
a couple weeks, 3 weeks maybe. So we're already seeing the success. We're already seeing people saying, hey, I have an idea.
Yeah.
So we just want to foster that as best we can.
Is there a way that people can get those ideas to you?
Yeah, I would just contact my office if you have an idea, and right at City Hall, just contact my office, and we'll have a conversation about anything. I don't know if you're going to talk about this or not, but one of the things I just want to mention is the city has a very, very long history of successful special events. We have a committee. We have a special events committee. It's made up of multiple departments. We have a offshoot of that is a Motorcycle Week technical review committee, so they review everything Motorcycle Week. But we have a special event. So if you came in and said, hey, I really want to do this fireworks display, I want to have people come in, food at it, whatever it might be, we have a committee that reviews all that. Now, they're not the special events committee that's coming up with all these ideas, but they're working through the process of it. So if you have, example would be Constance Canal. Well, we want to close the street. Okay, so this is what you need to do to close the street. We want to have food. We want to do this. Okay, this is what you need to do. You need a loudspeaker license. Okay, this is how you get to that point. That committee, and the relationship they have with people that come in to want to do special events, makes it so seamless, because they may not know all the things that they need to get right. If you want to have this big concert and you want to have these loudspeakers, you may not know that you need to have a license, or how you go through that, filling out the application to do that. Yeah, so we walk people through that stuff all the time, and we have a very, very long history in the city of being very successful at organizing these events, either because we have to organize them, or because somebody else is organizing them, but we're helping them through the process, and it works very well for us. I
love that. I think it's awesome that the city just buys into its community so much. It's
go back to when Pumpkin Fest came here. When Keene decided that they didn't want it because of what they had happened down there, the mayor at that time, Charlie Sinclair, who runs the Motorcycle Week Association, they and the council at the time, they said, we'll take it. I mean, it really wasn't much. It wasn't like, hey, let's debate on this for 2 years and see what we want. It was, we can do it.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of it goes back to our successful history of how to run events like this, and how to, even if we're not running it, how to oversee them and make sure that they're safe, they're effective, they're what the city needs. The city citizens aren't left behind. So we do a really good job at this kind of stuff. And so it's one of the reasons why I'm not worried that we can make these social districts very successful.
Yeah. Speaking of Keene specifically and Pumpkin Fest, they canceled their Pumpkin Fest due to the riots and alcohol-infused behavior. And it sounds like there's no real big concern because the city knows how to run these events. Is that weighing any decisions you're making around the social districting on the timeline, the spaces that's allowed, who's allowed, what businesses you want to get involved?
So I think part of it was, to answer that, I think part of it was making sure we didn't make it too big, right? We didn't want to say, okay, it's all of downtown.
Yeah.
That wouldn't work. So part of it was controlling the size of it. But in controlling the size, we wanted to make sure as many businesses were included as we could. We do have law enforcement. We've dedicated an officer to the social district while they're open. Not necessarily because we're worried about problems, but it's a way to, one, to make sure that if problems happen, they're immediately addressed. And two, when we're talking about reviewing it, it gives us an opportunity to have a city staff person being able to say, yep, I've been the police officer there for 6 events and I've had no issues with those 6 events. The police are monitoring all their tracking all of any incident that they may have there, which are very few right now. The only ones they've had so far are just questions about the event and maybe not, I didn't realize I had to do it this way. Or I couldn't, those types of things. And so that's an education piece, right? And
when those are the calls you're getting are just the education piece, it makes it easy to educate.
Right. It makes it very easy to educate. Generally the people are not, I didn't realize I couldn't do X and I'll take care of it. I won't do it again.
Yeah.
That's what, so we're trying to manage it that way, both with some enforcement, and controlling the size of the district, but knowing that the council at any time can vote to expand if there's a reason to expand.
Yeah. Are there any other towns that you've modeled Laconia after across the country, or anywhere you're looking for advice?
So I don't remember the names of the communities because they were out of state. But our fire chief did come through with a couple of examples of other communities and we pick some things off there. I am certainly not afraid when I'm working on writing a policy or writing a maintenance plan like we had to do for this to find what other people did. Ooh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Let me write that down. So there were a few. I can't remember the names of the communities off the top of my head, but there was a couple that were out of state, and they just had some simple we got to think about trash pickup. Oh, yeah, we should really make sure we have a hard stop time at night. Those types of things. And so, directly modeled after, maybe not, but certainly stole the good ideas from some other places.
Yeah. Did you see any places that weren't working and take advice from them?
No, not really. I didn't really see any of those jump out. I'm sure there are, but really didn't see any of those jump out.
Always...
but I didn't really necessarily see any of that.
Yeah.
I go back to, you look at take the Constance Canal as an example. That was set up previous years. You could drink outside there. So now the fire department went down and gave, they said, they blocked off the ends and said, this is how many people you can have there and all that. But it was still outdoors. We do Wake the Lake, Bike Timberfest up in the Weirs. Is there a third one? Biketoberfest, where they block off a piece of Lakeside Ave, and the businesses that are there, you can have your drink in an enclosed area. So it's not completely uncommon. The difference is it's bigger now, and it does require to make sure that people are following the rules and that the business owners, they're selling a beer and it's in their cups like they're supposed to be and all that. And when they walk out the door, it's probably a new feeling for the business owners to go, I'm a little bit. You're leaving with that.
Wait
alcohol.
A second,
you're not supposed to do that. But so far things have been going really well.
I love hearing that. And this was such a thoughtful endeavor, right? There was a lot of time, energy, and voices put into this to make sure that it goes as well as possible. And are there any large community concerns you were hearing throughout the planning process, or you're hearing now that you're hearing it often enough where you're like, I just want to tell everybody, this is a concern you might have, and here's my answer.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I probably hear is that this is just inviting an open access to alcohol, and that's not the case. And again, the business owners that are selling the alcohol really, really care about the people that they're serving. Certainly their licenses and their business success. So they want to make sure everything is going correctly. So they're educating their patrons. The police are making sure, they see somebody that they think is underage drinking, they're going to address that.
Yeah.
If they see somebody that they think is overly served and intoxicated walking down the street, they're going to address that. But that's not what this this isn't like you can bring a cooler down and have, a couple cases of beer in your cooler. That's not what it is. You're still dealing with establishments who are licensed and know the rules and know the laws of what they're doing for serving alcohol. They do a phenomenal job at it. It's just expanding where they're able to be. And so we're not just turning a blind eye to saying, hey, go get a drink and do whatever you want. We really are making sure that it's being enforced correctly. It's why we have police officers down there. I think we have one at a time right now. But it isn't just this free for all alcohol, do whatever you want. All the rules and all the laws still exist.
Yeah.
So
awesome. Thank you so much for that conversation. And before you get out of here, I just have a set of rapid fire questions that we ask everybody. What's one word to describe your job?
Busy.
I love that. I think that's probably pretty accurate.
It's pretty accurate.
You have the whole city on your shoulders.
Yeah,
moderately.
It's busy.
What is outside of Laconia? We'll give you Laconia because you work for the city. Best place in New Hampshire. So you can't say Laconia.
Best place in New Hampshire. Well, I will say I probably would have answered it differently that last week. I mean, I'm born and raised in Franklin, so that'll always hold a special place in my heart. I know it's rapid fire, but I was up in the White Mountains last week for a conference and looking out over Mount Washington and all the mountain ranges. It's really hard to look at that and not think, wow, what a beautiful state we have.
Yeah.
So
it is. That's one of when my wife and I moved here. Just you're an hour away from everything.
You can be at the seacoast, you can be in the mountains, you can be, it's just such a gorgeous place. And I was looking out over the mountains just going, this is just a gorgeous state we live in.
It's so nice. And that's why Bike Week is such a great spot, because everybody can come up here, they can bike around the beautiful state,
and they do,
and they got a nice little perch to stay in right in the center.
They do rides out of Lakeside Ave during Motorcycle Week, group rides that go all over the state, different places. So multiple days they do those rides, and because it's a beautiful state to be at.
You've been a fire chief, been in the fire department, city manager. Got any third or fourth career moves you're looking at?
No, I think this is probably good for me. I really enjoyed that. I loved being a firefighter. I loved being a fire chief. My career was, that was my dream job growing when I was little. Certainly had a chance to live that out. The transition to being in city administration has been wonderful, and I really, really enjoy it. So, no, I picture being in city administration for quite some time to come.
Awesome. We're looking at the weekend after Labor Day, and social districting went on all summer. We're getting kind of right out of the big touristy parts of the season. But what does the success look like for the social districts?
Yeah, I think we find that our any concerns over legal issues, crime, or any of those types of things, and crime's a tough word, but you know what I mean, anything legal based is non-existent because we didn't have those troubles. I think it's the business going, we can't wait to keep this going, and it's people, either the businesses, city employees or residents saying, hey, this was really fun this year. As we move into next spring and summer, I get this great idea. That's how I picture the success. No problems and people wanting to see it grow. Yeah.
Once you get that buy-in, it really helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go to desk snack.
So in my desk, I have a box of Wheat Thins that's not exciting, and I always have a little candy there. You got to have a little snack once in a while. So
I keep sesame sticks on my desk.
There you go. You got to reach down and have a little snack every once in a while as you're working through stuff. So yeah, I guess those seeing as they're sitting in my desk, I guess those would have to be
Wheat Thins.
Yeah, Wheat Thins would have to be my thing.
Are you a campfire person or a front porch person if you just had a night to relax?
Oh, front porch.
Front porch?
Yeah.
Just watch the world go by?
Yeah.
I love that. Do you have a favorite color?
Half the stuff I own is probably blue, so I got to probably say it would be that.
Half the stuff I wear is blue, but my favorite color is purple.
There you go.
So it is, if you could change one thing by snapping your fingers, anything, what would it be?
Wow, that's a good question.
We will judge your answer.
We will judge my answer. I would love to go back to. I joked earlier about growing up in the 80s. It was a much simpler time. Pre cell phones and social media and distractions and all that, and people spent time on the front porch, and that's simpler times.
Yeah,
that's what I would snap and go back to a little more simpler times.
I think that's
and I say that with having 2 cell phones and a laptop and a tablet and everything else. So I'm not saying I'm not part of the problem, but yeah, simpler time.
Yeah, I love that idea of just being able to snap and connection. Yeah. I think that's what we miss a lot of times, especially with the technology. Whole nother conversation.
That's a whole different conversation. There's a public health piece in that.
1,000%. That will be an episode eventually. The last question I ask everybody, what gives you hope?
It gives me hope because I think deep down, there's a lot of people in this world who just really want the best for the world. And maybe we have different opinions on how to get there, but I think deep down, most people really want the best for everybody around them. And so that kind of gives me some hope.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kirk, for sitting down and having this conversation. Yep. It was so great, and thank you so much. Yeah. I want to send a sincere thank you to Kirk for coming on our show and talking to us about social districts. I think it was very important to see the amount of thought, work, and effort that went into planning this in a responsible, safe manner. He wants to bring in community voices constantly, and that is not worth nothing. We really appreciate his time and his availability to come out here. That's our season finale. And it's been a crazy season so far. We started this show because we believe that public health doesn't live on a poster, in the street, or in a public memo. It lives in your community. It lives in the decisions your city makes, in the systems that support people when they're struggling, and in the conversations that honestly most people aren't having loudly enough. This season, we went upstream with former Guilford Fire Chief John Beeland, who reminded us that the best emergency response is just being prepared. We sat with Adam Moulton from Reverend's House, who talked to us about his recovery housing that he offers, what it actually means to give someone not just sobriety, but a home. We talked about housing with Eve Toth. We heard from Jeff Ledoux at Camp Resilience about the men and women who serve this country because they deserve more than just a thank you at a football game. And last time, we talked about the AIDS HIV epidemic, which is just like the show Cheers, living well on past the 80s and 90s. And now we're ending it here, talking about social districting in Laconia, talking about that cold drink that you can now have with a little bit of sunshine, which, when you think about it, is all public health. It's connection, community, a reason to go downtown and run into your neighbor. That's what Better Together is all about. Not any one issue, not any one answer, but the idea that when communities invest in each other, upstream, downstream, in the hard stuff and the simple stuff, health follows. Before we go, we wanted to take a peek behind the scenes. Each week, we record the monologue a couple times, once for rehearsal and once for the day of. Tessa took the liberty of creating a blooper package for me to live react to, and I don't want to suffer alone, so I'm going to invite Tessa and Emma out here to watch it with me, and we'll talk a little bit about how the season went, what we're looking forward to maybe next season, and overall, how we felt about the show. So if y'all want to come join me, let's roll the clips. Does anybody have any thoughts about those bloopers?
I think watching it more than once definitely helps. You laugh more every single time because you can hone in on.
You just remember them.
Yeah.
I never realized how much I can't read until I'm reading the script and I'm just zooming through it and how many times do I just blow by whatever I'm trying to say and I'm 2 sentences later and I'm like, wait a second, I said something wrong. Never.
Sometimes. I feel like you get in your head about it and then you repeat yourself a bunch of times. You catch it though. Do you now have a bunch new things to be self-conscious about?
Oh, so many.
Yeah.
I think a lot about when doing the interviews, a lot about how I respond of trying to not just be like, oh, I love that. That was something.
Do you say, oh, I love that a lot?
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
1,000%.
1,000%. The I love that is something I said at the end of, we did a video series, the Letter to My Younger Self video series, after interviewing everybody. Every time in the middle of that, if you go back to the raw takes of me in the background, you just hear, I love that. After literally Courtney was talking, after every time she came to an end, I was like, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, you need a list of canned phrases on the side. We'll have a separate tab.
Yes.
General interest phrases.
Do not use.
That sounds so interesting. To follow up on that.
That's different than...
I only sort of like that. Yeah.
Oh, there.
Parts of it.
It's okay.
I love that less than what I loved before.
Yes, it's okay. Did you guys have a specific conversation that stood out the most to you from behind the scenes? Just to give everybody a little insider information. Emma is talking in my ear. Not really. She never talks. But she is scrolling our script. Yeah, she gives a little tap. But she scrolls our script during the monologues and then highlights questions for me to ask with the guest.
That are never followed through on.
Very rarely.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, though.
Yeah.
And
I feel like we give the guests the questions ahead of time so that they know what we're going to be talking about. So they're already know where we're going. So they answer it before you have to prompt them a lot.
Yeah. And it makes it really easy. And then Tessa's back there switching cameras, pressing all the buttons. Yeah. But we really, it takes a little bit of a team to do this because if I was doing it alone, it would be terrible. Mostly during our writing sessions when it's the three of us that things
who would tell you your jokes are bad?
Exactly. Or tell me that bridge too far without science. Too many words were said without any reference to public health. But what conversation stood out most to you guys from behind the scenes?
Well, I'm looking at a list of them right now. I think that Adam Reverend's house was great, and that was the third time he came in here, and he was still great every time. And just very engaging. It felt conversational. I feel like sometimes people get on their soapbox and they want to talk about all of their stuff, but that felt more natural. He felt less fazed by the cameras.
He was really good about that, partially because he had been in here a few times. We recorded. He was our test guinea pig for multiple the pilots for these podcasts. He was the guinea pig for them when we were testing out who to host, all those types of things. He was great. Loved his conversation, and it really helped expand the conversation beyond just his organization and what they do. It was recovery housing in general and how it plays into the Lakes region, not just what is Reverend's House doing, but what Reverend's House is adding to the economy, adding to the state, why it matters. So
I agree. That was probably one of my favorites, but I'm not going to be redundant. I'll say the good news story with Heather. That was probably one of my other top ones. I just loved, Heather's great.
She's funny.
Yeah. And I love the fact that it's positive take on other news compared to other news out there.
Yeah.
Good news stories.
That was a really fun one.
She told us we're doing everything wrong. Apparently, we're supposed to whisper the intro instead of getting progressively louder.
She wants a different.
Hey.
If you notice in that episode, I settled it down. Hey.
Yeah. And then never followed up.
Never again.
Yeah,
never again. No, we record the interviews first and then the monologue after. The first couple episodes we didn't do that, and that did not go well. But I really liked Heather's conversation because it was just fun, and she's a funny human being, and it was just usually we are talking for a maybe 4-minute chunk that gets edited down to 3 minutes. It's all about an event or some specific subject, but then we were able to just like divulge into the conversations that happen off mic. Usually we just like had them on mic, and it was great, and the conversations went really well, and they went a bunch of different directions, and we ended up talking about mental health and talking about all these.
What else do we talk about?
Yeah, you start with housing and you talk about Harry Potter. One of my favorite things has been figuring out the naming, the titles
Do you
for
know
this
what you're
show.
going to name this one?
Clickbait.
I have thoughts on this one of two men with mustaches and suits talking.
Oh, I thought you meant
Jonathan meets his future self.
There you
That's a good
go.
one.
That was city government suit mustache. What else? What else could go wrong? What did anything else from like when we started conceptualizing this to where we are now? Like, did you see when we started talking about doing a podcast where we are now being where we are now, or did you? Like, I didn't. I kind of thought we were going to be like struggle bussing still at this point, but I feel like we're into a decent rhythm of it.
Yeah, I feel like we've got a good rhythm. I feel like people are interested in doing this. You know, I feel like, you know, the partners seem to want to have another avenue to talk to the community. So, you know, it's...
Yeah, I think honestly it's what I expected, because I expected us. I've seen obviously through the bloopers the progression of just like our quality and like lighting, whatever set wise. I expected that to be kind of on the trend that it is. I also was like, I'm not entirely a podcast person, so I was like, oh, podcast, another but I honestly have learned a lot, and I like the variety that we have on the guests, and I'm excited for season 2.
I am too.
Of who we're gonna have, because it's only gonna get better, I think. And like, I think we've gotten like Kirk. He was one we didn't really expect to have, but I'm glad we did. It's very relevant to what's happening.
It's timely.
Yeah.
We tried at the beginning to like figure out if we should set in a segment of like current conversations happening in the Lakes region versus having the whole episode. But I think how we've gone about it of not really touching on what's relevant makes these more timeless, where
Yeah,
like you can come back. I think that was an important thing about today is talking about social districting when it's first starting. Like, we could come back in a year from now, go back to what Kirk was saying and like say like, oh yeah, look at how awesome it is now. Even then he thought he was doing good, but now it's great, right? Or Bike Week, even we mentioned it in the show that Bike Week is about to happen, but I'm sure that next year around Bike Week it'll be good to come back and be like, oh yeah, these are the things the city's doing in preparation for Bike Week, not how is Bike Week going. So one last question for both of you.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Let's see, we'll start with Tessa.
Okay.
What gives you hope?
Oh. I hate to. I was thinking this when you asked Kirk this, and he kind of said it. I guess is the community or the people, just like whoever your circle is around you. That's I feel like the most important at the end of the day of whatever it is you might be dealing with, because people are dealing with all sorts of different things in their life. But like the constant, hopefully, is people have like community around them.
Emma?
Ditto.
Just white flag.
I feel like, I mean, a lot of people say very similar things, and they say them in very different, eloquent ways, you know, but, you know, it's community. The fact that, in general, people, beyond politics, beyond specific issues and stuff, they do want good.
They want good.
No, I mean,
They want good.
beyond the humanness of, like, beyond the worldly things, there's just the one that's constant. It's humans.
And
Yeah.
normally talking person to person, you can see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
What about you, Jonathan?
What gives you hope?
I
Ditto.
no. I was nervous you guys were going to ask me that because nobody's asked me that.
Did you prepare?
Yeah.
Come on.
I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it since we started asking the question of like, what gives me hope?
Somehow I did not think about it once.
I've thought about it for
Should have saw it coming.
5 episodes now. We've been doing that question as the last one for 5 episodes.
Yeah. He asked this during job interviews too.
I do ask this during interviews.
Everyone, you just go up to people on the street.
Yeah.
You're like one of those annoying people with like
constantly just.
I didn't get asked.
What gives you hope? No, I asked it. I just started asking it since we started asking it on the podcast. For me, what gives me hope is the fact that people are willing to set aside, not differences, because some people aren't willing to set that aside. But people are often, what gives me hope is the people who are willing to set aside differences, to set aside their background and their history and their world to just meet someone in a moment and connect with them about what is currently happening and what needs to happen moving forward. I think seeing people, like every one of our guests, they don't care about the background of someone. All they care about is where are they now and how can we get them help? How can we fix some of these systems that are broken that led them to this moment? But the person they take the momentary person. They don't talk about what led to HIV/AIDS. They don't talk about what led them to recovery housing. They don't talk about what led them to their suicidal ideation when we're talking about veterans, right? They just say, hey, you're in this moment. Let's get help. And I think that gives me a lot of hope. And that's what every one of these conversations has shown me, is that people are willing to set that aside to just help their fellow humans. So we'll be back with another season come August. And in the meantime, go outside. It's beautiful. I'm sweating because it's hot outside right now. It's also New Hampshire, and in Laconia, you can drink. So go have fun in those social districts safely and in a preventative manner, as a public health organization should say. These two are going to each take turns doing their best impression of how I close out the show every week.
Subscribe and follow so you don't miss what's coming next. Find us at pphnh.org or on socials at pphnh. Check out the full cut on YouTube.
I like the pphnh.org because that is, sometimes. I don't say org, I say org.
Oh my, I've never paid that much attention.
Sometimes
constantly,
you'll say it,
yeah.
I'm like,
whenever I'm doing a good news story, I think about this. But
you made fun of me when I knew the entire URL for my website.
Yes, you put https //
I said www though. I did not say. I would get HTTPS wrong somehow.
You said HTTPS.
No. Okay. Better Together is a partnership for public health production. It is written by me, Tessa, and Emma. Insert joke. Our producers are Jonathan Lile-Sexton and Emma Peterson, with technical direction from Tessa Donahue. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next year.
We'll see y'all next year.